Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He's Ron Filipkowski, and together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the corporate and mainstream media. It seems that the corporate and mainstream media has actually become the MAGA movement in recent days. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but let's start, Ron, with uncovering this Pete Hegseth controversy. Of course, Donald Trump has nominated him, along with a bunch of other clowns, to lead the US military. And it's not quite going to plan, is it? Fill us in from here.
Well, when you have your mom making phone calls to senators saying like, I know that I said in a letter to my son a few years ago that he was an abuser of women, an alcoholic, and a terrible person. But he's found God and he's a good person now. That doesn't mean things are going well for you. You know, when your mom is doing a media tour,
right,
vouching that you're a good guy. And keep in mind, like, as a criminal lawyer, like, I've seen, like, one thing that we all know as like criminal defense lawyers is no matter your clients can do some horrific, terrible things, commit some terrible crimes. Sometimes family members will show up in court to support that person. Sometimes friends will, sometimes coworkers, etc. They'll write letters. As a defense attorney, it's your job to sort of round those people up. But, no matter what someone does, a person could be the worst serial killer in the world. The moms always show up and vouch and say that their kid is a good boy. and I'm getting flashbacks to those days as I'm watching Hegseth's mom on Fox and Friends.
We have a clip of Pete Hegseth's mum coming on. I think her name's Penelope, isn't it? And she is trying, she's obviously trying to rewrite the narrative, as you would for your own child. I mean, we've been having this conversation about Joe Biden pardoning his son, which we'll talk about later as well, and that is the unconditional love the parent has for their child. Not in the case of Jesse Waters on Fox, where his mum used to phone into the show and berate him for being so extreme. But in this case, you can see that she's clearly trying to just reframe the story. I suppose that's kind of the nicest way of saying it. Let's have a quick look.
But we are broken by your behavior and your lack of character. Mm-hmm. When you wrote that, what's the backstory? What was going on that made you so angry you wanted to write that?
Well, I will tell that story in a moment, but let me make two statements first, and one is to President Trump. And I want to say thank you for your belief in my son. We all believe in him. We really believe that he is not that man he was 7 years ago. I'm not that mother. And I hope people will hear that story today and the truth of that story. So the other thing I want to say is I am here to tell the truth. To tell the truth to the American people and tell the truth to the senators on the Hill. Right. Especially our female senators. I really hope that you will not listen to the media and that you will listen to Pete.
And don't look at his white supremacist tattoos, because that's nothing to do with this. He's a good boy.
I was a Hunter Biden critic, and I know we're going to get to that topic later, but this sort of relates to that because, like, one of the things I said all the time to Democrats who are like blindly defending Hunter and just chalking everything up to his drug problem was the fact that, like, look, I think that he did a lot of bad stuff. He filmed himself doing a lot of bad stuff. I saw those videos. But, Hunter Biden wasn't in government. It's not like Joe is trying to appoint Hunter to be Secretary of Defense. So, if Hegseth was going for a job as like a 7-Eleven manager or something like that, and I was interviewing him and he told me this story about how he had all these terrible problems 7 years ago when he was 37, but now, he's straightened his life around and turned it around, I might be willing to take a chance on him as a manager trainee for a 7-Eleven. But as the Secretary of Defense, who is the other person besides the president with the nuclear codes, to run the most powerful governmental organization on planet Earth with what, 2 million employees? No, I don't want a guy whose life was a disaster 7 years ago, who for all and we're supposed to just take his mom's word for it that all of that bad stuff ended back then and he's better now. I mean, in addition to all the other stuff, just the stuff that he's admitted to, he's admitted that he had 5 affairs during his first marriage, which was only 4 years long. That was a long time. That's the first one. That's not even during the time frame of all the other stuff we're talking about. That was long ago. So look, the fact that he was, a junior officer in combat 25 years ago or whatever is nice. But, there's tens of thousands of people that were junior officers in combat. That doesn't make them qualified to run the Department of Defense.
I don't really care so much about his private life. What he does, what anyone does in their private life is their business. So I don't judge him or anybody else for that stuff. But I judge him for the fact that he's an idiot who said that he never washed his hands because he has never seen a germ.
Hold on. Can I just stop you for 1 second, though?
Yeah.
Because do we want our secretaries of defense with the nuclear codes to be subject to bribery and blackmail by foreign governments? No. That's why we do background checks into their personal life to see if they have secrets or weaknesses hidden away that can be exploited. Because if we know about them, if the New York Times knows about them, you damn sure know Xi and Putin knows about them. So if this guy has a problem with affairs and alcoholism,
fidelity, yeah,
these foreign governments are going to exploit that, get dirt on him, and blackmail him. So when you say you don't care about anything he's done in his private life, well, it does matter, because getting caught doing those things and having foreign governments catch you doing those things can lead to blackmail and coercion in your official duty. He's not trying to become
no. But all I'm saying is there's enough other stuff outside of his interpersonal relationships that make him completely unqualified to lead the U.S. military. Exactly. That's really the point that I'm making, and I feel like, we're covering this and we're talking about his mum going on TV to bail him out. Let's just think about Lloyd Austin for a moment, who is the current Secretary of Defense, a 4-star general, somebody. Can you imagine Lloyd Austin's mum going on TV and saying, look, he should have told you that he had a medical issue, because of course he had his own issue recently with a cancer thing, and he didn't want to talk about it, and he took time off work. Imagine his mum coming on to kind of make his case for him. It's insane that we're at a point where the person who is planning on leading the US military as designated by the future president is already having to get his mum to write a sick note or a begging letter in this case.
Look, and
the media is just covering it like it's normal.
When Lloyd Austin was nominated for his position, he has a spotless background and family life and resume and qualifications. You couldn't find a person with a cleaner background and better qualifications. And yet, all I heard when he was nominated on Fox, on Newsmax, and from right-wing politicians was this was a DEI hire, and he was only getting this job because he was black. These are the same people now defending Pete Hegseth, who doesn't have 1% of the qualifications of Austin, with a wretched background, and they're defending him while saying that Lloyd Austin was a DEI hire. It just shows you how despicable these people are.
And it shows you the direction that America is going to take with this new administration, and how the drama will not subside. Because, just this week, as you and I were discussing before the show, it's too much for people like you and I to cover. Like we need an extra set of arms to write all these stories. Now, there's a twist in this story with Pete Hegseth, and that is that there is the potential for somebody else to step in and potentially take his place. And of all people, that person could be Ron DeSantis. Let's take a look.
Have you had any conversations with the president-elect about linking you with Governor DeSantis?
I spoke to the president-elect this morning. He said, keep going, keep fighting. Behind you all the way.
So you're in this all the way.
Why would I back down? I've always been a fighter. I'm here for more fighters. This is personal passion for me.
You're not withdrawing your name from consideration, just to be clear.
We're meeting all day with senators.
I know your mom was just on Fox. She says that you are a change.
She got yanked. She got yanked out the way. So she's posing the question, are you aware that, he might be switching you out for Ron DeSantis? I mean, this would be massive. DeSantis also has experience in the military, doesn't he? He's connected to Guantanamo Bay somehow, isn't he?
He was a Navy JAG officer, a lawyer.
Right.
Correct, in the Navy.
So this now is because, there's going to be political infighting. DeSantis, of course, was running for the presidency or for the nomination against Donald Trump. They're arguably bitter rivals. But Trump is kind of running out of decent candidates to pull in across the board, really, isn't he? I mean, he's literally the only access he has to people are the worst candidates on the planet. What's your take on this?
Yeah, there's so much palace intrigue going on. I mean, look, if I can see why media was like secretly rooting for Trump, because if you want like a reality show with nonstop chaos and drama and news, with the news cycle going 24/7 with insanity, like Trump's your guy. Like it's nonstop. I don't want that, but I can see where like if what you care about is ratings, he's ratings gold. I mean, just look at this scenario. So now you have enter Ron DeSantis. Well, some of the speculation behind DeSantis comes from the fact that they were together yesterday, Trump and DeSantis. They were actually photographed together for the first time in 3 years. They've met a couple of times, but DeSantis has not allowed any public photograph of them to get out because he didn't want to be photographed with Trump, and he has his reasons. But yesterday, for the first time, that happened. And it has been confirmed through reliable reports through Fox that they did discuss the possibility of Trump naming him to replace Hegseth. And now we heard there was a report that Hegseth was going to cancel some of his interviews with senators and fly down to Mar-a-Lago tomorrow. Then he said he's not. I would caution everyone this is a very fluid situation. And I would caution anybody in chasing any leads or stories, because there's so much spin and disinformation and head fakes being put out there right now about this. And the other half of this speculation is this. If Trump nominates DeSantis will be confirmed by the Republicans. He'll sail through. It'll be a no drama appointment because there aren't any Republican senators who are going to oppose DeSantis for this. So that part of it you could say is attractive. The other part is this. Trump world has been lobbying for DeSantis to appoint Laura Trump to Marco Rubio's Senate seat. So you can see the deal is there for our transactional president-elect. I will make Ron DeSantis Secretary of Defense, which would help DeSantis out tremendously, and we can talk about that. And at the same time, DeSantis will appoint Laura Trump to that Senate seat. And by the way, what also feeds some of that, if you pay attention, was Trump today endorsed Michael Whatley to remain and continue on as RNC chief into the future, but did not mention Laura Trump continuing on as co. So this deal could actually already have been made for all we know. It's just crazy. And how does this benefit DeSantis? Well, look, DeSantis is a lame duck right now with 1+ years left in his term, and he's out. So if he wants to run for president, think about this. He's going to be running against, like in 2028, like a J.D. Vance from inside the administration, where Ron has been wandering around for the last few years as a lame duck in the wilderness. Contrast that versus him running for president in 2028 as Trump's Secretary of Defense. It would help DeSantis out big time.
I just want to congratulate you on some exceptional forensic analysis, because very few people would make the connections like this, And I think, I put this down not just to your
pay attention.
Well, not just to your attention, but also to your experience inside the Republican Party. And I want to ask you something about this, because something I see as a pattern with the Republicans and the Trumplicans is their willingness to forgive and forget. Whereas other people might bear a grudge forever or be like, no, you did a dirty on me. They seem to be able to brush a lot under the carpet and be like, let bygones be bygones. Is it just power and money that drives that? The fact that Trump would welcome DeSantis back into such a central position in his administration?
I mean, there are some grudges that some of them don't let go, but there's not many. That's right. It's a hallmark of Trumpism. Somebody else who's a piece in this moving, couple other people, all these moving parts, Susie Wiles. I mean,
yes,
Trump's chief of staff was fired by Ron DeSantis. So think about that. That if Trump is going to replace Hegseth and nominate DeSantis, you're talking about he's nominating somebody and he's basically bailing out Ron DeSantis's political future and giving him a huge leg up on to be president down the road. But his current chief of staff was fired by Ron DeSantis last year as his chief legal advisor.
Is
she going to say anything?
But didn't Susie Wiles run DeSantis's campaign to be governor?
She did, yes.
So she got DeSantis
She was supposed to then run his campaign for president, but DeSantis fired her because she didn't get along with Casey DeSantis's wife, and Susie Wiles did not get along.
And as we know, Casey DeSantis is a lot more capable and eloquent than her husband.
And literally the next day, Trump hires Susie Wiles. He's like, you just dropped this incredibly talented person into my lap. Thank you very much. He hired her literally I think 24 hours later, and she ran his presidential campaign. And wiped the floor with DeSantis in the primary, by the way.
You couldn't make this stuff up.
This is why the media wanted Trump right here. All of this drama and intrigue. I mean, you're not going to get this with Harris or Biden.
And notice the media coverage. There's no more mention of dementia, authoritarianism, mental health, all the stuff that, in the last couple of weeks of the campaign, when even Kamala Harris was talking about fascism and all this stuff, it's all disappeared.
Yeah.
Now they've gone back to the old routine of covering everything that Trump says and does like it's gospel, instead of questioning every move as you just have.
Look, Trump has had 3 nominees already wash out.
Yeah.
He got rid of his DEA. He replaced his DEA chief nominee a few days after he replaced his White House counsel nominee today. That's one of the most important positions in the government. He ditched that guy. And who's the other one? DEA and Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
So you've had White House counsel, attorney general, and DEA head have all already dropped out. But I don't really hear much in the media blaming Trump for this and his incompetence and his lunacy. We're just focused on the nominees, and I'm like, hey, when is somebody going to take a look at Trump and go, he's had 4 years to get ready to make these
he's not fit for purpose.
And it's one disaster after another, and we're not done. We still got RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and all these other people and Hegseth to deal. Hegseth could be the 4th nominee to drop out tomorrow. 4 major nominees in 3 weeks. That's insane.
Now, there's another issue that, again, people aren't talking about. And that is, why would Donald Trump consider non-military people for a senior military role? And to me, this goes to the kind of Kash Patel story, which we're also going to talk about in a minute. And that is the distrust he has of the FBI for Kash Patel and the distrust he has of the military. So having military generals around previously, both as chief of staff, but also running the military, which you would have thought would be quite a good match, military generals running the military, he has turned his back on protocol and gone with people who are so fundamentally unqualified because he doesn't trust the military. Let's just think about that for a second. That is the commander-in-chief distrusting his own military. Look what's happening in South Korea today. Look what's happening in France today. These overturning of governments, uprisings, involving the military, maintaining order. America, and I mean this, if we project forward, if Trump's administration is as disastrous or controversial as his nominations are, just in these last 3 weeks, you could see anything happen in the US as is currently happening in South Korea, a country that we never for a second thought had these types of problems. And the government collapsing in France right now. I mean...
Yeah. Trump's not going to appoint any generals to anything because you think about it, they were the ones who stood up to him the strongest last time. Yeah. Mattis, Milley,
yes,
Esper,
yes,
Kelly. Those are the people that he blames for telling him no and preventing him from doing a lot of the stuff that he wanted to do. So there's no way he's going to put any of those people back in there. So he's appointing some people with military backgrounds, but they were like, for example, he just appointed a guy Secretary of the Army who was a first lieutenant in the Army. He was a junior officer. Hegseth, again, a junior officer. These people never rose above the level of...
That isn't military experience. I'm not disrespecting their service, but to be the head of the military, to have served temporarily in a junior position does not constitute military experience. I mean, you were a Marine. Would you accept the job as leading the military?
I think that doing 4 years in the military gives you some perspective on what it's all about, but does not qualify you to run anything. No, it does not. No.
And if you're sane, I think we discussed this before, but if you're sane, even you as a former Marine would say, actually, thanks very much for asking. It's very sweet of you, but I'm completely unqualified for this role. Please go to somebody else. But Hegseth has not said this. DeSantis, I presume, would not say this. And this speaks to the ego, to the craving power, and also being willing to bring dysfunction to your own country. Like if you're a patriot, you're going to want the best person for the job. You're not going to take the job if you know nothing about the job.
Yeah, but the case of Kash Patel is quite interesting because, if you look at Kash Patel's resume on paper, it is something that is going to look incredibly impressive because he has a lot of these big titles on there. But then when you really dig into it, it's like so many of Trump's nominees, it's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, and he always exaggerates everything about his resume.
Yeah.
So he was on Devin Nunes' staff in the House Judiciary Committee during the whole Russiagate thing. But he claims he was his chief of staff. He was not chief of staff. He was involved in prosecuting an espionage case when he was he often talks about himself as a national security prosecutor at DOJ. So when you dig into that, though, what I read, the case that he talks about where he claims to have been the lead prosecutor, he was not. He was like the fourth guy. He was not even close to being the lead prosecutor. Then the next thing on his resume is that he served as the chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense. Well, let's take that sounds very impressive, right? Well, let's take a look at that one. That appointment was made after Mark Esper was fired with 1 month left to go in the administration, and Chris Miller was appointed as an interim Secretary of Defense, and Kash Patel was then brought in as his interim chief of staff. So he has all these things on his resume that sound great, but everyone was like a short period of time, exaggerated, and he wasn't even qualified to get those jobs when he got them.
But this embellishment that you describe, I mean, that's what you do when you go for your first job and you've only ever, right, you've only ever delivered newspapers.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just, you puff it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But we're talking about leading the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Some late-breaking news, I don't know if you're aware, I saw it just before we started this, is that Olivia Troy, who was an aide to Mike Pence, went on MSNBC and criticized Kash Patel and said he was not fit for purpose. And Kash Patel has now sent a letter via his lawyers to Olivia Troy asking her to retract what she said about him. If that isn't a clue as to how this guy would operate the FBI, we've talked about the potential for these kind of vendettas that Trump has and others in his orbit. But, I mean, how is he setting himself up, taking the First Amendment and your right to free speech in America into account, sending a legal letter to Olivia Troy just for something that she has, an opinion that she has presented on television? I mean, that does not bode well, does it?
Threatening to sue her.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit thin-skinned, don't you think? See, this is a guy that's never really been scrutinized before. He's used to being the one that's on the attack, that's throwing the bombs. But he's not used to incoming. He's not used to getting criticized himself. He's never run for public office before. He's never been vetted before for anything other than his security clearance background check. So I think back when he had those done years ago, he probably had a fairly clean private life. Although that's the other curious thing about Kash Patel is we know almost, and as closely as I've followed him over the years, and I've watched hundreds of Kash Patel interviews, I know nothing about his personal life. And I like gossip. And so if I don't have any gossip on Patel's personal life, that's very odd. It's just very odd that we don't know anything about what he does outside of this stuff. So this is also why I believe that Trump did not want FBI background checks on a lot of these
right
people. And why he drug his feet for so long on signing the memorandum of understanding on the Presidential Transition Act, which he finally did 2 days ago.
That's right.
And the only reason why he did it was because there were several senators, including like Murkowski and Collins, who said, I'm not voting for any of these people unless an FBI background check is done. And that's my excuse. So Trump finally had to give in on that. And, I'm pretty interested to see what comes out on people like Kash Patel.
But he's gone to private firms to do background checks.
Yeah, that means nothing.
It means nothing. I mean, he could own these private
That's why
firms.
all these people are washing out, because he's not vetting them. This is the problem. I mean, he didn't know all this stuff about Hegseth. He knew maybe a few things, but the word out of Trump world is that they're furious because all these things keep coming out and Hegseth didn't tell them about any of it. And so,
or do some private background checks before you nominate them. Before the FBI check, do some private background checks.
I mean, did Trump not consider the Gates ethics report, that was looming and that would be used against him? Was that never a consideration? Was that never thought of? Surely he had to have ways to find out what was in that report. He knows representatives on the ethics committee that he could get back channel information from, but obviously he just didn't care.
I think you're giving him way too much credit. He isn't that person. And he's also, the other thing about these people, the kind of criminal minds of people who are sexual predators, is they don't see other sexual predators as sexual predators. They just see them as normal.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. So what you hear all the time from these people, like Tuberville said when they asked him about Hegseth's alleged sex assault stuff, he said, well, that was a long time ago. I mean,
like that makes it okay.
Their standard response. What?
Yeah.
It didn't happen last week, so who cares? That's ancient history, right?
You put together a montage of Kash Patel. You have a particular interest in his ear, nose, and throat. I don't quite know what it is. Just before I play it, just tell us about the sniffing.
Well, look, I've watched hundreds of Kash Patel podcast interviews on all these crazy podcasts and shows over the years. And people, and I clipped all of them. I saved a lot of these clips and recorded them and posted them. And a lot of people over the years have said, why are you posting this guy? And I said, because if Trump wins, this guy is going to have a very senior position in Trump's next administration, because he followed Devin Nunes, who is his, benefactor, his mentor, down to True Social. And Devin Nunes was the CEO of True Social, and Kash became his right-hand man. So he would live down at Mar-a-Lago. He was going to all these conferences. And the word was that Trump wanted him as his CIA director or FBI. So I clipped a lot of this stuff. And one of the things just for this moment, and anticipating that this day could come, and here we are. So I have this huge trove of Kash Patel clips that I have. And in the course of making those clips, I noticed that throughout these interviews, he's constantly got the sniffles. He talks a mile a minute and he's always sniffing. And I thought, just seems very odd. Doesn't seem like a nervous tick to me, because he's actually, you can hear some mucus going in some of these sniffles. So it just seems very strange. It seems like a problem that a lot of people in Mar-a-Lago and Trump world have. With their nasal passages for whatever reason. And so this morning, I just dug up a lot of these old clips and just started randomly pulling out the sniffles off of them.
Here we go.
The deep state is afraid of him, and they just know he's got a lot of information on them, and that's why they're terrified. And you can see them just
by AOC. She's in her 20s. You got your butts kicked by a former bartender.
All these efforts are unclassified. And what Google just did to us today,
we're absolutely dead serious.
What he does for a living, and he's comply with the law.
And I'm still waiting for it.
Allowed me to visit to get the declassified documents out to the American people. And so we didn't do it. We took the tougher road, and that's something I learned from Devin Nunes. You got to do it.
Produce that. The other
for the House Intel Committee, and not in Devin's personal office. And long and short of it was, I didn't really want to go over to and the other thing I talk about in my book, and people aren't going to like this, servers so they could look at it. Analogizing that with Hunter Biden, when you look at the reports that have made public about the FBI and what the investigatory steps they took into that map and showed them the receipts about county has a district attorney. Don't believe me, committed crimes in 20 some states? And I did say on Truth, so of all the drug charges, of all the gun stuff, of all the prostitution, of all the sex trafficking and human trafficking, that a single one of them doesn't.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the allergies, surely.
So, I mean, he's got this obvious problem going on, something going on with his nose. He has never provided any explanation. But along the way, I mean, you can even see in these videos all this crazy gear that he's wearing. And if you look in the background, he's selling all of this stuff. It's all Trump-related stuff. He put out 2 children's books called The Plot Against the King, where Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi were like the evil people
and
out to
Hillary Clinton as well.
And Hillary.
Yeah.
And he was last year he was selling magic pills to counteract the COVID vaccine, that it was supposed to cleanse you of mRNA that went into your system if you ever got the COVID vaccine. He's selling these pills. So this guy is a huckster and a grifter who may have a drug problem. We know nothing about his private life whatsoever. And as all we know about this guy is he's been hanging out at Mar-a-Lago for 3 years around Trump selling stuff. And now we're going to put him in charge of the FBI. And by the way, in these interviews, the only thing he ever said about the FBI is the building needs to be shut down and closed. The actual headquarters building needs to be closed. padlocks put on the door, everybody fired, and it needs to be shut down, essentially, is what he said. So you're putting, again, another guy in charge of a serious federal agency who has said that he wants to destroy it.
But this is Project 2025. This is the deconstruction of the administrative state. This is how you do it. You put loyalists into the senior positions, and they effectively they crash it from the inside.
Yep,
it's the equivalent of putting a padlock on the door. And my fear is that if it were just one of these institutions, you'd be like, okay, maybe we can still manage. But it's all of them. I mean, the Supreme Court has already been padlocked, right? The FBI, we're looking at the military. I mean, the system, the American system that we enjoy, that we take for granted because it's always there, and if we ever need it, and this goes right deep into law enforcement in both the judiciary, but also with policing on the streets. You know, this is going to change America unrecognizably in just 3 or 4 short weeks. It's go on.
Yeah, I mean, you notice like from military, law enforcement, and healthcare, he's appointing all these radical people.
Yeah.
But on the financial side of the house, which is what he cares about for himself, it's all the establishment, old guard, Wall Street guys are getting appointed. Like he's not screwing around with money. Right? No. Those are like the old guard, like stay the course guys. So it's very interesting. He in other words, all of his radical revolutionary transformations, he wants to affect it in every part of the government except for the economics part of it, you know.
But even putting someone like Charles Kushner, Jared Kushner's father, as an ambassador to France, when France is seeing this uprising of the far right, Marine Le Pen, and Marine Le Pen's niece, I think now, is running a new far right party as well, and they're Marine Le Pen's father started the National Front. I mean, to me, these back channels are all intertwined. Going to war with Mexico and Canada over tariffs. I mean, and leveraging those tariffs and claiming that it's, you know, to do with drugs and immigration. I mean, it is insane. And yet we are watching it play out in front of our very eyes.
I mean, it's a slap in the face to the French. And where's Trump going to be on this weekend? On Saturday, he's going to be in Paris. He's going to the reopening of Notre Dame and the cathedral, and Jill Biden is also going to be there, which could be interesting. They obviously don't like each other very much, but I mean, when you're appointing like a felon who's, what would he be considered? Not a father-in-law, right?
He would be
father adjacent. Like,
you
know, he's the father of
his daughter's father-in-law.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, you know, a family relation, let's say, marriage,
who he pardoned.
And you know, some of his other ambassadorships, I saw his ambassador to UK has like no qualifications whatsoever, just a billionaire donor who wrote huge checks, you know. So. But you know, again, like I'm not gonna, you know, go crazy on ambassadorships because they are traditionally like,
but it's a matrix. He's creating a matrix of loyalists, of yes men, of people who will do Trump's bidding. And everything, it seems like, it's almost like the whole world is an enemy apart from Russia. And he wants to use leverage with every country, even if they are considered an ally. It's the rewriting. I mean, there's so much history. So much history has created allies. I mean, even the Prime Minister of England, Keir Starmer, made a Lord Mayor's speech the other day. He was dressed in white tie and tails, very formal. And he said that we don't want to have to choose between the United States and Russia and Europe. Like, we're being forced to choose.
You know,
and we don't want to do that.
All these doctrines about not appeasing autocrat, you know, you don't appease a Hitler, you don't appease a Stalin, or
you don't
Putin,
negotiate with
right?
terrorists.
We have never had a situation where our friends and allies around the world have to apply that doctrine to us.
Yes.
Because really, I think now I think people like why am I drawing a blank on the Trudeau? You know, if he gives in to these threats by Trump is just going to come back with more threats, right? So it's sort of like they have to stand up to him the way that we have stood up to bullies and dictators over the decades. And these are our friends, you know, because if Trudeau, you know, I read that maybe like he called Trump or something and kissed the ring or whatever.
Well, he showed up at Mar-a-Lago.
That's the worst thing he could have done.
I agree.
Think. If I was a Canadian, I'd be furious.
But apparently he promised Trump that they would do more on the border, and that was good enough. I also read that the reason that Trudeau came to Mar-a-Lago is because Trump can't cross the border because he's a felon and he's not allowed in Canada.
Well, Trump's not going to go to Canada. I mean, he's not going to go. But, you know, he's not going to go to Canada right now anyway. He wants everybody to come to him. Yeah, I mean, that's totally the wrong move by Trudeau. Yeah. I'm not rooting for Canada against the United States. Obviously, I'm an American, but at the same time, like, I see Trump's game, and I'm not sure that a lot of our friends around the world do see the situation very clearly right now.
Another former Trump aide has just got out of prison, and here we are with another Trump announcement. I am pleased to announce that Peter Navarro, a man who was treated horribly by the deep state, or whatever else you would like to call it, will serve as my senior counselor for trade and manufacturing during my first term. Few were more effective or tenacious than Peter in enforcing my two sacred rules: buy American, hire American. He helped me regenerate unfair trade deals like NAFTA and the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement, and moved every one of my tariff and trade actions fast. And you posted this with your quote was, Peter Navarro, from prison to the White House. Usually it happens the other way around for Trump appointees.
Yeah, I mean, he just got out of prison and now he's going to be, a cabinet official, right? I mean, sure, usually they go from the Trump White House to prison, but now he's going from prison to the Trump White House, may go back to prison. I mean, in addition to all of that stuff, the other thing that's strange is like Navarro hates a lot of these people that are being appointed. Yeah. And he hates Jared Kushner with a passion. The two of them despise each other. So a little surprising on the Navarro appointment. I didn't think he would appoint him this time, but I guess, if you go to prison to protect Trump, and keep in mind, what did he go to prison for? He didn't want to answer questions about trying to steal the election, the Green Bay sweep plan. He didn't want to answer questions about that. So he did 4 months in prison to avoid answering questions about that plot. So I think that this is Trump rewarding his loyalty. He demonstrated loyalty by willing to keep his mouth shut and go to prison. So this is how Trump is rewarding that loyalty.
Trump only wants to be surrounded by people that are going to kiss his ring and blow smoke up his tushy. And every single one of these appointments.
Navarro hates Elon Musk. I just think about it. It's like these people all hate each other.
But this is what I was saying to you about the Republican doctrine. It's like, power is more important, so we'll just pretend. Because I'm actually writing a Substack blog on this at the moment. I haven't finished it yet, but it's about the Republicans who pretend to be perfect. And, we've used Alina Harbour in the past as an example of this. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I'm slightly obsessed with her Instagram, where they present this image of perfection, and that anything less than perfect is not good enough for them and for real Americans. And I sense it's very much the same with a lot of these characters who will, there's two very different versions of a lot of these MAGA Republicans, the public-facing version and the private version. And whilst in private they'll hate each other's guts, they probably all hate each other. I mean, Trump doesn't like anyone and nobody likes Trump. But there is more to be gained by playing the game.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it really is a game that a lot of them play where they pretend to like, it's like a plastic phony game where they pretend to like each other, and then the second they
because
turn
none of
their
these
back,
people would
the knives come out.
They'd never make a living in the real world.
Yeah.
Like they're not skilled. They're not smart.
That's why, like, every time some of these people get nominated, we're always digging up these old clips of them trashing each other. You know, like somebody just dug up, I forget who it was, like Vivek or somebody was just trashing Trump.
Yeah, it was Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah,
I saw some old clips of Vivek was trashing Musk.
That's right. Yeah,
about his connection to China.
That's right.
So,
and now they're working together.
Now
supposedly.
they're supposed to be like good buddies and partners. It's all just so phony. It's like, I don't know. Like, to me, if somebody said all these horrible things about me or my family or whatever, I'm not going to be buddies with that person just for political power. But these people seem to be able to compartmentalize all that personal stuff.
It's so interesting to me the double lives, because there's so much hypocrisy in their critique of others, especially over the Hunter Biden pardon. It's like Trump pardoned 274 people for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? It's like, it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, listen, we've got to take a quick break, but I want to come back. We'll talk about the Hunter Biden pardon and connection to Kash Patel there. We've also got some news out of Moscow that Tucker Carlson is back there doing his propaganda drive for Vladimir Putin. We'll do all that next here on Uncovered. Don't you wish you had a secret weapon? Something that always impresses, a recipe maybe, or even a piece of clothing? Well, a secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life, and that is how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing. As a secret weapon. Timeless, classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. I love my Ace full-zip hooded sweatshirt in a charcoal heather grey. It keeps me warm, makes me feel more confident, because it's quality clothing. Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. Not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below, or you can get a personal endorsement from Ron Filipkowski, who is presenting his Mack Weldon flannel shirt, which he rarely takes off.
The only flannel shirt I've ever owned, there it is, from Mack Weldon.
Beautiful.
It's very nice.
Yeah, well, I have the hoodie, and I literally live in it. I wore it to a wedding. Okay, let's get back to the big stories. Maybe we should start with the Hunter Biden pardon, because this is a huge conversation. I made a video for 5 Minute News a couple of days ago. You'll see it on Midas Touch in the coming hours. How I just said Joe Biden did the right thing. Well, and as a parent, I think parents all pretty much understand. And what changed for me, and I'm sure for Joe Biden, because he did change his mind, is that Donald Trump won the election. And what was he going to do? Leave his son in the hands of Kash Patel or of, Matt Gaetz or Pam Bondi? Forget it. So that's my opinion. But the far-right media, well, much of the media, not just the far-right media, but, so much of our media now is in right-wing ownership. They see it very differently, don't they?
Yeah, like I didn't care about anything right-wing media or politicians or anybody on the right had to say about this, because it's totally irrelevant to me what they have to say. Especially given Trump's pardons, which are just a horror show. I've read through every Trump pardon. I wrote an article about Trump's pardons last year. They're horrible. There's hundreds of them, and they're all fraudsters, Republican politicians, drug traffickers, violent criminals, everybody, but they all had money and they all had the ability to get to Jared Kushner and to get their pardons through a variety of channels.
Not to mention Roger Stone and
so,
Paul Manafort.
I mean, all of his cronies and friends. Yeah, sure.
And
Flynn,
General
Steve
Mike
Bannon.
Flynn, who lied twice to the FBI. Yeah.
Dinesh D'Souza. We could go on and on and on,
Yeah.
right? They're horrible, one right after the other.
Yeah.
Indefensible. Paul
And that's not
Manafort.
what a presidential pardon is for, is it?
No.
It's for clemency. It's for people to make amends.
So the idea that like those people who didn't say anything about those pardons are going to criticize this is just laughable, and I couldn't care less. But what I did care about, and what made me extremely upset, was Democrats and former Republicans like myself, and mainstream media who is on their high horse, virtue signaling on this issue as if they're some pious people. And this is the reason why I stopped watching media, stopped watching cable news shows. And I also always want to say this. I distinguish between actual reporters who are in Congress, out in the field, doing investigative work from other media. Okay. When I'm critical of media, I'm not talking about those people who are getting stories in the field. I'm talking about people on cable news shows, talking heads, right? And editors, and there is a herd pack mentality with them, where something happens like this, and most of them all kind of look at each other like, what should be our take on this?
Right.
And then 2 or 3 people weigh in, and then they all go, yeah, that's our take. And it's like, this is why I stopped watching it, because I saw this happen so many times. And it's just like the same opinions and the same hot takes over and over again. And it's like, they were all wrong in my view on this, because what their take was with this pardon was about protecting Hunter for what he has been already convicted of. That's not what this is about.
No, not even
this
close.
Pardon is about future prosecutions that have been promised by Trump acolytes, including Kash Patel, the FBI director, who is obsessed with Hunter Biden, who has said in interviews, one interview after another, that they feel like Joe's brother James, Joe's daughter Ashley, and Hunter have all gotten away with many other felonies that they've never been prosecuted for, and that they intended to reopen these investigations because they felt that James Comer failed them and was incompetent, and they were going to go in there and straighten this up. So to me, this pardon was to try and stop that from happening, because that isn't what America wants. This is what anybody wants other than the far right. Nobody wants to dredge up Burisma in 2016. Okay, nobody in America wants that to happen in 2025. And this is just Joe Biden going, you know what? At 83 years old, I'm not going to be dragged into courtrooms over this nonsense. So I'm just going to end this stuff right here, and we're going to move on as a country and as a family. And I think that that's what this was. And so for all of these people on their high horses to condemn Joe and say Joe lied, he lied because he said he wasn't going to pardon him. Well, that was like 9 months ago. A lot has changed. You know, I don't think Joe would have done this if
Kamala Harris had won. I agree completely.
He would have just let this go. Let him be sentenced, get what he's going to get, because that's not what this pardon is about. It's not about the rinky-dink gun charge. It's about future prosecutions and preventing them.
And, you know, the Biden family have been through enough. I mean, you know, if you read into the story behind Hunter Biden's addiction, and again, none of the media are talking about addiction as a disease. He was saying his first memory of Bo was waking up in a hospital bed next to him after the car crash that killed his mother and sister. I mean, you have to understand the level of trauma that this family have been through. and how, as humans, we are all flawed. And for those of us that have the addictive gene, you can turn to alcohol, you can turn to drugs, and your life can be ruined and you can end up on the streets. And this is real life. This is humanity. And there is no empathy for that. I was thinking about how he must have felt when he was off his face going into a gun shop trying to buy a gun and saying he wasn't an addict on the form, which is the only issue. You know, the criminality was that he was dishonest on the form. It wasn't illegal to buy a gun. I mean, where I'm from, getting the gun would be the illegal thing. It was the form.
It was because he checked that he wasn't using drugs.
Correct. Correct. But again, if you have
no
any
one
empathy,
ever prosecuted for that.
Right.
That's
so
the point.
if you understand the mindset of addiction and the struggles that people have, all of that stuff should go away. And I think that what Kash Patel is on about, I mean, he's like QAnon adjacent. This is all about Hunter Biden's laptop. This is all that storyline.
That's what they want to revive.
Yeah.
And that was the point of the pardon. But I heard nobody in media, nobody make that argument.
No.
Not one person. And it's just like, they wonder why they're losing viewers. They wonder why they're losing ratings, because it's the same old takes over and over again that are not original and that are often wrong. And, you know, I could accept wrong takes if we have some diversity of opinion on some of these shows where people are coming at it from different directions, but they're not. It's this herd mentality. It's stale, it's tired, it's boring, it's not original. And not only that, most of their takes, they're just getting off other people that are on social media. So,
well, that's why you should never watch rolling news. You know, and I used to work for network news, and I understand rolling news, we call it the churn. You've just got to keep talking until the next commercial break. There's no editorial control. Just keep talking. Doesn't really matter what it is. Oh, phew, we made it to the break. And then you have to do it again for another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you can get through your shift with just talking, saying anything, you know, a lot of these people, there's no editorial control. They're chosen because they can wing it. And it's cheap television. They don't have to pay for reporters or for researchers.
If you watch like 8 CNN shows in a row or 8 MSNBC shows in a row, they're virtually all the same.
Right.
I mean, it's like slight variations on the same themes and the same topics all day long. It's like, it's mind-numbing to me.
You having worked for these networks, I understand. So you watch the network when you're not on it, right? You watch the network when you're not on it. And if your shift starts at 12, you're listening to it in the cab on the way in. So you're picking up on what it is that they're saying and what is the themes. And then it's your job to go on and continue the conversation, not to change it, not to bring your opinion, but just to jump on the train.
See, I would want to take the exact opposite approach.
Right.
I would not want to hear anything that's going on in the network because I wouldn't want to be, my opinion, to be influenced by them.
And that is why you and I can do this show every week and not watch the networks. I don't have the news on. Like I don't even know what they're talking about. The only thing I see is clips that you post online. So, you know, I really do think it's a lesson going into this next administration is how the media is managing Trump and coverage of Trump. And I think people are really gravitating towards independent news. We now know Midas Touch has overtaken, you know, Fox and certainly, you know, most of the major corporate media channels in digital viewing. And there's a reason for that. And so, you know, independent news and independent media is really the only place to go to get an unfiltered and kind of accurate portrayal of what's actually happening. I have a quick clip. I hope this is the right one of Kash Patel talking about Hunter Biden. Let's take a look.
Produce that. The other thing we learned, Hunter Biden is guilty of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. Just like they charged Paul Manafort and others during the Trump administration, Hunter Biden was shown to have been in bed with criminals from the Ukraine and China to lobby the United States government through the laundering of money that Hunter Biden and Devon Archer received and leveraging his relationship with his dad, Vice President Joe Biden. That is the definition of violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He didn't register. This DOJ should, of course, charge him. They won't, because they'll give him a pass and bury it with a Trump indictment. So I think that's where we need to focus.
Yeah, I mean, if that guy is going to run the FBI, we should all be worried, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is what he said last year right there, you know, and that's the point. I think the fact that I have a different perspective than the conventional media is just because I have listened to Kash Patel hundreds of times and others, and media has not. So they don't have a full appreciation for what these people intend to do. And he tells you right there. Yeah. And everything he said there, with the exception of him not registering as a foreign agent, that part is true. The rest of it's all lies. It's all lies. There was no money laundering. Look, I am no, I'm no Hunter Biden apologist, right? I'll call Hunter Biden out for selling his art for, ridiculous prices to political donors. I'll call him out for his drug use and his prostitutes and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. But he didn't do what Patel is just saying. Yeah. Look, I think, was he paid? Did he do anything for Burisma that he was paid? And did he hold himself out as being able to pull strings when he really couldn't? Yes, he did that. And he's admitted to doing that. And that is an unethical thing to do, but it's not an illegal thing to do.
Well, he leveraged
Joe
his
Biden
name.
had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Is the point.
Yeah, he leveraged his name to get a job.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
We've seen that, and a very lucrative
Everyone
job
in Trump
as well.
world does that too.
I know.
Don Jr. just became like CEO of a Bitcoin company. You think if his name was Don Jones, he would have got that job? He knows nothing about Bitcoin. So that's like what Hunter did to a lesser degree. But, the fact that Hunter was out there saying, I can get my dad to do these things, the point is one thing. The point is his dad did not do those things.
I want to talk about Russia for a moment because, as you know, I do think that some Americans, not all, and certainly the corporate media's coverage of the way the world is changing, that they seem to, I don't know why, but, to me, all roads lead to the Kremlin in so many of these stories. And the mainstream media don't really care for that stuff. Either they're conveniently leaving it out for a reason, or they've been told not to, or there's some other, I don't know what's going down. We know that Russia interfered with this election and the last, the 2016 election. We know they wanted Trump elected. We had a senior spokesperson from Russia recently say, we helped Trump get elected. He now needs to do something for us, making reference to Ukraine. We know Trump is on the side of Putin and not Zelensky in Ukraine. We know that the bomb threats that went off at polling places in swing states were, came out of Russia. I mean, how much more evidence do you need? And now we have Tucker Carlson, another Trump apologist and surrogate, going back to Russia, doing more Russian propaganda. Because the last time he went, do you remember he did that disastrous interview with Putin himself, and then ended up having to go to grocery stores and train stations claiming that Russia was better than America. Just listen to his rhetoric this time.
We are closer to nuclear war than at any time in history. Far closer than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That would mean the elimination of Russia, the United States, and most of the rest of the world. We felt there must be someone behind the scenes in Washington working to make sure that this conflict doesn't become a nuclear holocaust. But we found out that no, in fact, there is nobody. Tony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, cut off all contact between the U.S. and Russian governments. There is no back channel, there is no conversation, and there hasn't been for more than 2 years. That's shocking. Meanwhile, most Americans have no access to any perspective other than that granted to them by NBC News and the New York Times. They don't know how close we are. They don't know the Russian perspective. We've been trying for over a year to get that perspective out to American news.
I mean, this is nuts. And yet, very little coverage of what's really going on here.
The Russian perspective.
Yeah.
The Russian perspective is lies. It's propaganda. They put out to the American audience what they want the American audience to hear. And obviously, what is Putin's greatest obstacle to taking over Ukraine? The United States providing aid. Without that, he would have been successful. But because we provided aid and assistance so aggressively, it's been a disaster for him. So the only way that Putin is going to turn that spigot off and stop this was to change public opinion. First, he tried to do it by changing public opinion against the U.S. providing aid. And he did that with people like Tucker Carlson, people like Fox News, putting all this stuff out there about Zelensky that was all lies, about people in his administration, his government. They're embezzling money. They're buying Maseratis. You know, they got houses all over the world. He has a drug problem. He's anti-Christian. All this stuff that they put out there that was picked up by right-wing media in the United States and put out there. And that campaign mostly failed, right? Because it was touch and go at times getting Ukraine aid packages through Congress when the Republicans took over. But they all got passed because there was still enough Republicans who were supportive of Ukraine to make it happen, combining with Democrats. But the fallback position was getting Trump elected, because that's that was the other way to end this war. So what Tucker here is saying is that, like, American, that and Putin has been threatening World War III for 3 years. Every day, so what do you do? What do you do? The MAGA solution is, and the Trump what they would say is, because Putin is threatening us, we need to give in to Putin. We need to give him what he wants, because nuclear war could be happening any day now, right? So if we change our policy and abandon our friends just because Putin makes a threat, I mean, we've done that before. We did that before in 1938 in Munich, right? We don't need to do that again with Putin here, but that appears to be what we're doing. So what is Tucker doing? He's there to interview Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, who has been the foreign minister for 25 years of Russia and is one of the worst habitual liars on the planet. Everything he says is a lie. So what Tucker wants to do is get his propaganda to the American public through Tucker. What a patriot.
Do you think Tucker knows that he's being used as a mark by the Kremlin? Or does he genuinely think that Russia is, our ally rather than our foe? Where do you think he stands in this story?
I think that what he wants, what Tucker believes in, is a white Christian Western world. Right. And he is concerned that this war between two white Christian countries in Europe is going to affect the balance of power vis-a-vis China and Asia. Right. So whenever he talks about Russia, he talks about that we should be on Russia's side against China. That is always Tucker's central theme, that China is our real enemy and we should not be fighting with Putin. But he's incredibly naive on this, because Putin will play both. I mean, Putin is not interested in being our friend. No. And this is what you heard a lot in the Tucker interview of Putin, which was 2 hours long, where Putin did 99% of the talking. Yeah. Was Tucker kept trying to say, don't you think it makes sense for the United States to partner up with you against China? And you know what? Putin never agreed with him on that point. It's like, dude, you have this narrative in your mindset that this is what you think is reality. And your guy here, Putin, is telling you right to your face, no, I don't agree with that. But you're going to stick to that narrative because this is what you bought into.
So much of this goes again back to the far right Christian nationalism, the Great Replacement theory, all this stuff that we've been warning about for years now. It's all coming to fruition, and Putin wants to reestablish the kind of Russian control. He wants the downfall of NATO. I have no doubt that this will be the next thing in America's story once Trump has got his legs under the desk of the Resolute desk. That he'll start bad-mouthing NATO again. He'll find something else other than they're not paying their fair share, doing Putin's bidding. And the world will become increasingly destabilized. I mean, we're already seeing this. I mean, I mentioned France earlier, but Germany's government is collapsing as we speak. South Korea's government is collapsing as we speak. This is not a coincidence.
I've noticed since the election several stories popping up in right-wing media about corruption in NATO and among NATO officials.
Right.
So, yeah, the groundwork is already being laid. The first step is to pull out of Ukraine, cut off aid to Ukraine, and then the next step is to pull out of NATO. And so I think that that's the way this is going. That's what Tucker wants to happen. Yeah. That's what Putin wants to happen. And I think that's what Trump wants to happen. And really the only people that could, in theory, stop it would be like a Secretary of State Rubio and a Republican Senate. But, we'll see if they have the will.
I mean, we could be looking at a military coup in America. I mean, I cannot see a way out. This is, in my lifetime, and certainly in yours, I have no doubt that we ever thought that this was going to be possible. And yet here we are.
As bad as it is now, like we're not even close to what it's going to be.
Yeah.
1 year from now, it's going to be 10 times worse than what we're looking at right now. And the American public really has no idea what's coming.
We used to think that the little Rocket Man relationship and the Elton John CD was all like a bit of a joke. But now North Korea has 10,000 troops in Russia fighting in Ukraine for the Russians. Trump
hasn't said a word about that.
Hasn't said a word about it.
No. Introducing an Asian power, an Asian army into the heart of Europe to fight a European war has never happened since the Mongols. It's been 800 years since that has happened. But that's what's happening right now, and no one in the Republican Party is saying a word about it.
And all those Americans who voted for Trump because they thought that the price of eggs was going to come down, they don't really know about any of this stuff. They're not engaged in this kind of geopolitics. They have no real understanding. They're just not interested. They're too busy.
That's why Tucker's in Russia, because he's got to provide the spin. He's got to provide the justification for all this stuff. The clips, everything. That's one of the reasons why he's there.
And the fact that Trump was practically going to war with our closest ally, Canada, is another example of how insane this is. Let's take a look at this clip from Fox with Jesse Waters trying to brainwash the audience into thinking that we should make Canada the 52nd state.
Let's just be clear. We're not going to make Canada the 51st state. We'll make it 51 and 52. You make Western Canada, that'll be Republican. Eastern Canada, that'll be Democrat. So you keep the electoral balance there. So many reasons to make this a state. I think it has the third largest oil reserves in the world.
Oh, a lot.
So that makes us an energy behemoth. It's the most well-educated country in the world because we need a little help in that department. Talk about mining, agriculture, fishing, AI, tech, real estate, Canada, you name it, they got it. We'll never probably lose another Winter Olympics. We'll have all of their skaters and skiers. Wow. I mean, good luck, Sweden. And they share our cultural heritage. They share our language. It's just a no-brainer. Now, I don't know if Canada is going to go along with it, but there's ways to maybe change their opinion.
Do you want to end it there?
I'll end it there.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The army's minuscule, but that's fine. We'll pay to protect them as a state. But we're doubling the size of the country, America. Think about it.
Thank you.
It's not even a joke, and yet they present it as comedy.
Yeah, it's like it's a big joke. It's all just a clown show. It's all entertainment. This is part of the reality TV show government, that Trump talked about, annexing Canada and making them the 51st state. And like with all things Trump, he makes an unfunny joke about it, which, by the way, he posted that, and that is Switzerland. Okay, so
my
that's the Matterhorn that he's posting. It's not Canada, it's not the Canadian Rockies, but dumbass Trump doesn't know the difference.
Yeah, it's all in the detail.
Yeah, yeah. So, but the point is that there's a lot of deadly serious stuff here. I mean, he threatened Canada with massive tariffs that would put hundreds of thousands of people out of work in both countries. It's our closest trading partner. We're incredibly interdependent and interconnected. And, so for them to make a big joke out of Trump threatening them with tariffs and having the prime minister of the country fly to Palm Beach to smooth things over because he decided to threaten a trade war with a midnight Truth Social post. These things are not a big joke. They're not. They're serious things. But, with Fox, as long as you keep them laughing and you keep the ratings up, none of that stuff matters, I guess.
We've talked a lot on this show since the election about what I've been calling buyer's remorse, the people that voted for Trump and didn't realize quite what they were getting. And now we're starting to hear the rhetoric about changes to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and cost saving, and this is really going to rile people up. I mean, this is going to become a bone of contention, isn't it? Let's take a look at this clip.
The problem with the Democrats is they've never run out of things that they can give away for free, quote unquote. When you talk about $1 trillion in debt payment just on interest alone every year, we can't just talk about the military, though. The military can do some things better. We can save some money just in the way of contract. We're going to be careful that we don't decrease our abilities because China is right on our heels. However, if you talk about 75% of the budget, 75% is non-discretionary. We're going to have some hard decisions. We got to bring the Democrats in and talk about Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. There's hundreds of billions of dollars to be saved, and we know how to do it. We just have to have the stomach to actually take those challenges on. But we can't just talk about our discretionary budget. That's less than 25% of our budget. We have to have some real hard discussions.
Well, we talk about this all the
I mean, this is going to worry people who rely on these entitlements in a big way.
Yeah, let me just translate what he just said.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what we know: that during the campaign, Trump said that he was going to cut the federal budget by 33%, increase defense spending to its highest levels that it's ever been, cut taxes, balance the budget, reduce the debt, and not touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And everybody knew that. Everybody who's with half a brain knows none of that is possible. But people believed it. Voters believed it. Sure, tariffs is we're gonna make up all
solve all our problems
in tariffs, right? Waste, fraud, and abuse is what he said. We're gonna cut waste, fraud, and abuse, which is like, okay, you can wring every dime of waste, fraud, and abuse out. You just cut 1% of the government. Okay, fine. Where does that get you?
Yeah.
So here's the guy telling the truth. He comes on. Of course, it's after the election, so they can start telling the truth now.
Yeah.
And so what he's saying is, okay, well, look, we know that none of that's going to work. That the only way to do what we want to do, while at the same time cutting taxes and raising defense spending, is to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, something that we said we would not do. But then you'll notice the little thing he slipped in there in the middle, which he says, and we're going to need to get the Democrats to help us out on this. So what he's saying is, we need political cover, right? If we're going to do this, we don't want to go out there and do this on our own. We need to bring the Democrats in and get the Democrats to agree to do this so we don't take the heat. We can say this is a bipartisan thing. In other words, what they weren't willing to do on the border bill, now they want to do that to cut Social Security. And what they want to do is, raise the retirement age, cut benefits. But wait a minute, at the same time, Trump promised no taxes on Social Security. Now this guy's talking about cutting Social Security benefits. So it doesn't make any sense. So it is going to be very interesting to me to watch this play out, because you do have like the budget cutter hawks that are Ramaswamy, Musk, people like that do want to make dramatic cuts in entitlement programs. But then you have Donald Trump, who promised 1,000 times on tape that he was not going to do that. So, and you have Democrats who are not going to go along with this. And then that's wishful thinking on his part to think he's going to bring in Democrats to cut Social Security and Medicare. That is not going to happen. There isn't one Democrat who's going to agree to that. So they're on their own. And that's what I put when I captioned that clip. You guys run the government now. No more excuses. You got the presidency. You want to cut Social Security and Medicare? Go ahead. I dare you. Go ahead and try it, and let's see what happens.
And this kind of brings us back to the executive order thing, where Trump is going to do so many of these things by executive order. And I would say that things like Medicare, Medicaid, they have to go through Congress, though, don't they?
Yeah, they have to. Yeah, they have to. He can't do those by executive order. He can do tariffs, but no, not those things. So I don't know. I don't see it. I think that the people who are going to lose in this are going to be the Musk faction. Right. That's why I think at the end of the day, they're going to come away with, they're going to make a big deal out of like these handful of things, like the government spent $5 million to research, butterfly reproduction. And isn't that, these things that are going to sound really crazy, but in real dollars, as a percentage of the budget, it's going to be like 0.1%. So they're going to either have to admit that defeat, that really no serious budget cuts were made, or they're going to have to raise taxes, or because there's just no way politically they can get away with doing what that guy said, unless Democrats go along with the plan, which
they're not going to do.
They are not going to do.
Okay, finally, let's talk about Tom Homan for a second. He's the new kind of border czar, who was the guy responsible previously for family separations and cages and the kind of horrific nature of Trump's immigration policies. He's back with a vengeance. Tell us, though, about his relationship with Mayor Eric Adams.
This is very interesting. Homan said that Adams called him. I mean, first of all, Adams is in federal indictment, right?
I know.
Free and campaign finance violations. So he's under federal indictment by the Department of Justice. So he calls Tom Homan, Trump's deportation czar, and says, I know you got all these other mayors, like the Denver guy, pushing back on you, saying that they're not going to do anything to help you round up migrants, but I will. I'm one Democratic mayor. I'm on board. Let's do it. I'll help you round them up, and we'll deport them and drag them out of their houses and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of funny because Homan is like, well, that's a positive step in the right direction. I'm pleased to hear this. Well, it's no coincidence that the only Democratic mayor who has stepped up, who said he wants to help Trump, is one who is under indictment for bribery, because as I heard some other Republican politicians say today in response to this, when they were asked on Fox, they said, he's just looking for a pardon.
Right. I was about to say, this is going to be a quid pro quo.
Pardon him.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing this. I mean, it's obvious. It's painfully obvious what he's doing. He's angling for a pardon. So he wants to be the first major Democratic mayor to get on board with deportations in exchange for a pardon. Adams knows how to play this game with Trump. It's pretty obvious.
Let's take a look.
I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, last week he reached out to the transition team and wanted to meet with me. I got that message this weekend. He actually reached out to me today personally and like to meet. And I told him, I said, look, I can be in New York City on December 12th. So let's set a date, and I'll gladly go to New York City. I'm willing to talk to anybody about the national security threat that this administration created, especially the amount of criminal aliens that are in this country that are causing a crime increase.
Yeah, well, that's not true either. But anyway, it just also Eric Adams is turning out to be a bit of a bad egg, right? And we can that's pretty clear to anybody. And just because somebody is a Democrat doesn't mean that they are completely clean. But, you know, it talks to the measure of the man, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you have Republican members of Congress who are just laughing about this, saying,
yeah,
he just wants a pardon. He doesn't really believe in our immigration policy. They're just like, you know, it's so obvious. I hope he doesn't get it. I really do. You know, and Adams even said, like, I understand that, you know, this could end my political career by me cooperating with Trump. Well, what political career? He's looking at going to prison.
Yeah, it already ended, mate.
Yeah, he just wants to stay out of prison and finish out his term. That's the best he can hope for, and he's playing the angles. This is his best way of doing that.
It is the most turbulent time. It's also a weird limbo period, isn't it? This period now going into the holidays, and, you know, with the new administration on the horizon, we're starting to kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like. It is a very unsettling time. And I just think it's important, just as we finish this conversation today, that we remind people that we're all feeling it. You know, if you feel unnerved, unsettled, nervous even, especially if you are a person of color, minority, LGBTQ+, I mean, the people that will genuinely be suffering from a future Trump administration, I just think it's important that we remind people that we feel it too, and we are all here for each other, because we will need each other, and the strength comes in numbers and a kind of mutual understanding of the difference between good and bad and right and wrong. And it's clear to me that Donald Trump knows none of those things, certainly when it comes to these appointments and his just general behavior. He's also been MIA. Have you noticed this? There hasn't been a sighting of Trump for a while.
Yeah, that's true. He's really staying behind the scenes. Like I said, yesterday he was at a law enforcement memorial service with DeSantis down in Palm Beach. But yeah, you're right. Because I think, you know, it's a very busy time for him on the phones. He's having to really spend a lot of time working on these senators to get his appointments through. And I don't think that he was necessarily expecting that. I don't think he was necessarily expecting to have to spend all day on the phone talking to senators to get his appointments through. But when you appoint people like the ones he's appointed, I think he really thought that they were going to be, all of them were going to be too afraid to stand up to him.
Right.
And they're threatening the people who are. Like, you take just finish. I know we're gonna fit, but like, just take Tom Tillis, for example.
Yeah.
Tom Tillis is somebody who's opposed Trump on a lot of things in the past, did not endorse him in the primary. And Tillis announced today he's voting for all of the Trump nominees, all of them, every one of them. Why? Because he's got to run in 2026 in North Carolina, probably against their popular Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, for re-election. And Mark Robinson has threatened to primary him if he votes against any of Trump's nominees. So these are the kinds of threats and arm twisting that is happening from Trump behind the scenes to these people. And I think that's why we haven't seen a lot of them.
Interesting. Well, I'm much happier not seeing much of him. You know, I really am.
See him plenty.
Right. I'm struggling, even hearing his voice or just seeing him. I'm trying to kind of reduce my contact in that way.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I haven't posted a Trump clip in ages.
Yeah.
And I intend to try not to.
I know.
As much as possible.
Well, me too. I've been talking about how the coverage that I want to do as we come into this new administration is going to be more about the effect of these policies on people rather than the kind of shitstorm drama of the announcements. You know, it's just
agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, I'm thrilled to have these conversations. We're going to be here throughout the incoming clown show to steer you in the right direction and provide support. It's becoming like a therapy session, this, isn't it, for everybody who's struggling in the mind.
Yeah. We're good, right? We're fine.
Okay. If you want to download the audio podcast to Uncovered, you can do that later tonight, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to rewind, watch it again, share it as you do, comment down below, and Ron and I will come back next week and do more Uncovered here on the Midas Touch Network. Thanks a lot, Ron.
See you next week.